Welcome, everybody, to Black and Gold Weekly. It's a weekly Boston Bruins show here on YouTube, brought to you in partnership with Black and Gold Productions. I am your host, John, and this is our co-host, Danny, as we are back for episode 60 of the show. And it is post-trade deadline. We know what's happened now. A lot of, obviously, one major move made there by the Bruins, and the acquisition of Hampus Lindholm, and also the extension given to him afterwards as well. So this is not just a rental deal. And we also have some news about Jake DeBrusk. We also have some news about last year's first-round pick, Fabian Lysell. We've also got everything that the rest of the Atlantic Division did at the trade deadline, which was a lot. And the Bruins are still playing games as well, so there's games to talk about too. So a lot to get into in this week's episode. Danny, thanks for being back again. Thanks for being here, ready to talk some Bruins hockey.
I couldn't wait to be back on again. If only all weeks were this busy.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about today, and fortunately, a lot of it is really, really good news.
All right, so before we get into it, I do just want to say thank you to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show would not be happening without them, so really can't thank them enough for all of their support and allowing this to take place. Also want to draw your attention down to the description of the video. There are 3 links there. If you're looking for any Boston Bruins apparel from any of the 32 NHL teams, all of them, or NCAA college apparel, you want to rep a school, all of those links down in the description can get you those products. And there's a wide variety of different things. There's a lot of great options, all the usual stuff like hats and sweatshirts and jerseys and stuff like that, but also some really cool accessory products as well. So if you're in the market for any of those things, please check out the links down in the description. But let's get into it here. We got a lot to go over, and I think we're going to start with obviously the big fish, the big move, Hampus Lindholm coming over from the Anaheim Ducks, and then subsequently signing an 8-year contract extension at $6.5 million per season. This was a huge move by the Boston Bruins. Overall, what's your thoughts on this, Danny?
I was shocked. I thought that the Bruins might play it safe this time around in the trade deadline, but they did exactly the opposite, and I am extremely happy. The Bruins gave up John Moore, Urho Vakanainen, and draft picks, which is a good haul for the Ducks in return, all things considered, especially with those draft picks. But I am extremely happy with what the Bruins were able to do in acquiring Lindholm, and subsequently signing him to an 8-year extension. We've seen that happen now 2 years in a row, because the Bruins signed Taylor Hall to an extension in the offseason, and I love the fact that not only were they able to acquire him, they were also able to get him in Boston for the long term. That made this deal even more worth it. Had it not been in it for an extension and just for this season, I would have kind of questioned the haul that the Bruins gave up, but I really, really like this move.
Yeah, given what Boston gave up, the first-round pick, the 2 seconds, Vakanainen, and Moore, I mean, Moore was kind of a throw-in there, but given what Boston gave up in total, this could not just be a rental for the Bruins. This needed to be something where Lindholm was a part of the group beyond this year. And I'm really happy to see them get him, because I think he really solidifies the top 4 for the Bruins. He can play with Carlo. He can play with McAvoy. He's a legit top 4 guy. And now they have him locked up long-term as well. He's 28 years old. He's got 22 points this season. He's been a very solid defenseman throughout his career with Anaheim so far. I think he has a chance to be even better in Boston, especially given that the Bruins are a better team than the Ducks are right now, so he's got a better team around him with the Bruins. I absolutely love this deal. I mean, for the last however many episodes, I've been saying top 4 D-man is the one thing I wanted the Bruins to go out and get, and they did exactly that. So I can't complain at this point when they did exactly what I wanted them to do and get a top 4 defenseman. So very happy to have Lindholm here. Again, he's still, he's right in the prime of his career at 28 years old. It's not like this is a guy that's 30 plus. The 8 years is certainly long, but I think you needed to add those extra years to get the cap hit down. Because Lindholm's a guy that honestly probably could have gotten $7 million a year from somebody else, or maybe even more than that. So for them to get the cap hit down to 6.5, they needed to put on those extra years. And that's well worth it, in my opinion. Because again, if you're the Boston Bruins, you only have so much more time with Patrice Bergeron, so much more time with Brad Marchand. Like, your window is closing here with those guys at least, although they have some good younger pieces still around that I don't think we're going to see a complete drop to the bottom of the standings from Boston or anything like that. But if you're going to win again with Marchand and Bergeron, it's got to happen pretty soon. So they're not worried about 7-8 years down the line from right now. They're trying to put the best team on the ice right now that they possibly can. And Lindholm is absolutely a huge upgrade for the defense for the Boston Bruins. So can't complain about that, in my opinion.
And I have to say, that was a great video that you did on the trade yesterday. I was watching it last night. And but anyway, Sweeney, to be quite frank, Don Sweeney can't draft.
Yeah.
So if you want to throw in those extra picks, people were complaining about the picks. Honestly, I'm fine with it. Get a player that is proven. Get a player that will help the club right now, instead of trying to reach for a goalie in the first round or something stupid like we've seen over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Although Fabian Lysell, who we're going to get earlier in the get into later in the show, might break that mold.
Yeah, he might actually work out to be, living up to the potential, but still, the overall drafting for the Bruins in recent years has not exactly left a great taste in your mouth, especially compared to what some other teams have done and the star power that they've been able to add to their lineups, whereas Boston really hasn't. They've gotten those top-end guys, but I'm with you. I mean, I'm fine throwing the picks in there. Like, we're probably going to draft somebody junk anyway, so it really doesn't matter. I mean, another fourth-line forward in the first round. Congratulations. Like, that, give away the pick at that point. But Lindholm absolutely makes his team better, and this was a move that the Bruins needed to make. They needed to add at the deadline because everybody else in the Atlantic Division and pretty much the Eastern Conference added at the deadline. And kind of want to get into that, taking a look at what everyone else did at the deadline around the Bruins. Florida made some huge moves. Tampa Bay made a huge move in getting Brandon Hagel. Toronto was actually the quietest of the bunch, with all that they really did was get Mark Giordano, veteran guy on the back end. But the Eastern Conference made some huge plays here. The Rangers went out and got Andrew Kopp, Justin Braun, Tyler Mott. The Penguins added Ricard Raquel. I mean, we saw some major moves. Max Domi to the Hurricanes, Marcus Johansson back to the Capitals. Like, every playoff team in the East added at the deadline. So Boston had to do something, because if they didn't, they were going to get left in the dust by the rest of the conference. So if we look at the moves that, all around everybody made, Florida added Giroux and Sherratt. I mean, monster moves for Florida and Tampa Bay. You had to make a move like this if you were the Bruins.
Do you think Florida's ready to win right now? I'd say so.
Wow. Talk about adding to the lineup.
It was truly fascinating to see all the teams really go out and not add, a player to be named later or a depth piece, but moves that can help them get better right now. And it was really fun to watch, all these teams kind of make moves that are going to make playoff races interesting. They're going to make the playoffs interesting, and they're going to help these teams in the future. And the Bruins had to do something, and they certainly did. It's going to be fun to see, how Lindholm fits into the Bruins and how Lindholm not impacts the playoff race necessarily, but if he increases the Bruins' chances of, getting farther into the playoffs. Because honestly, I don't want to face Florida right now. They scare me, especially with the moves they made at the deadline.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be funny if Boston somehow knocked off Florida, though, and Claude Giroux said no to the Bruins and basically said, trade me to Florida. I want to go there. That'd be so funny if the Bruins ended up knocking him out of the playoffs after he said no. But that would be a very,
awesome.
very tough series. Florida is stacked right now.
And honestly, if you look at, the potential first round opponents, they may have to face their toughest opponents in the first round. A lot of times in the playoffs, it's as you go round by round, it gets progressively harder, but that's not going to be the case this year.
I think in the East, particularly this year, every round is going to be extremely difficult, no matter who you play. There's no easy wins in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. All 8 teams in the playoffs in the East are very difficult, hard teams to play against, and very talented teams and teams that are capable of winning. So whether you're a 1 seed or whether you're a wild card team, it doesn't matter. Every series is going to be difficult in the Eastern Conference.
I'm excited for the playoffs. I really am. It's going to be a bloodbath, but it's going to make for some fun hockey, and hopefully the Bruins can make things interesting.
Yeah, I was saying that on my stream last night, that this could potentially be, at least in the Eastern Conference side of things, this could potentially be one of the best playoffs we ever get to see.
Yeah.
Just with how ridiculously strong the East is this year and what these matchups are going to look like, particularly in the first round. I mean, usually, sometimes the first round, the wild card teams aren't very good. The 1 seeds blow through them. It's over in 5 games. It's pretty simple. Like, I don't think we're going to get that this year in the Eastern side of things. We probably will in the West, but not in the East. I think even the first round series are going to be absolute dogfights this year. And
yeah,
I mean, Boston's likely to play Florida or Carolina or Tampa, someone like that. Florida or Tampa is going to have to play Toronto. The Rangers look like they're going to be playing the Penguins. Like, just ridiculously good first round setting up here for this season.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to just see how each team kind of counterpunched the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I've honestly, I don't want to say I've never seen that before, but it's just been fascinating to watch and look at. I mean, teams are not afraid to, make moves and get better. And I was worried the Bruins were going to sit back and kind of not do anything, but they responded.
Yeah, and Hampus Lindholm was not the only move that the Bruins made at the deadline. He certainly was the biggest, but it was not the only move, as they also added Josh Brown, a defenseman from the Ottawa Senators. Let's find the exact trade here to Boston. But Josh Brown, a 7th-round pick, come to the Bruins for Zach Senyshyn and a 5th-round pick. Brown's a depth guy. He's big, he's physical, he's tough, drops the gloves, but probably, not going to see a whole lot of game time for the Bruins unless they start to have injury issues on the back end, which certainly wouldn't be the first time we've seen that. But he's probably like a number 7 or number 8 defenseman for the Bruins. And just some added overall depth on the blue line, which has, Boston needed because it's come back to haunt them in the past.
Yeah, and when you look at what they gave up, I mean, Zach Senyshyn was unfortunately going to be I hear the ugh there.
I'm so glad that he's gone. What an absolute waste of a draft pick.
Absolutely, that was a reach. But he was going to be a career AHLer.
Yes.
And the fact that the Bruins were able to get some NHL depth for him, plus a draft pick, I'm fine with the trade. I mean, I hate to put a player talk about a player like this in any way, but getting rid of dead weight for an NHL player is always a good thing. One of the smaller moves, of course, certainly as we look at what the entire league did during this trade deadline, but still an important piece, and honestly kind of interesting that Sweeney traded away Senyshyn, therefore admitting that another one of his 2015 draft picks was a failure.
Yeah. No, I had enough of him. Although he had been playing better down in the AHL recently, but I've been saying this for years now. He's not an NHLer. Zach Senyshyn is not an NHL player, and I don't know. Some people don't want to just give in and agree to that, but he's not an NHL player. The dude stinks. He's a decent AHLer. He's not an NHL player, and he was a horrible pick in the first round of 2015. And I'm very, very glad that the Bruins finally moved on from him. But Brown, again, I don't think he's going to play much. He kind of takes that Jarred Tinordi role from last year, like the big physical defenseman, but isn't going to be in the lineup unless you start to lose guys and you start to really dig into your depth a little bit. But yeah, I don't have any issue with the move. They didn't really give anything up, so go for it. Added defensive depth is never a bad thing. And, he's a guy that I think is better than Tinordi. So if he does have to play NHL games, I think he's going to be a little bit better than what you had last year in that role.
And again, we didn't give up much for him at all. We gave up an AHLer and a draft pick.
And a 5th-round pick, which has probably not even a 10% chance of becoming an NHLer.
So I'm perfectly fine with that. I wonder if this was a money move, too, in terms of getting rid of Senyshyn's salary. You would probably know better than I do.
Well, he wasn't making anything.
Not that he was making a ton of money.
He wasn't making anything. Actually, Brown makes quite a bit more. Brown makes $1.2 million against the cap.
Yeah. So, this was just a move of kind of maybe a change of scenery will do wonders for Senyshyn. The Bruins got, an NHL player in return, probably, like you said, not going to play a bunch, but still good depth defensively, especially, as you probably can recall, last April, for instance, when it seemed like the entire Bruins defensive group was, hurt. Getting, Brown could help in a situation like that. I hope it doesn't happen again, but you never know, especially as the wear and tear of the season goes on.
And especially with Carlo and Grzelcyk, who have certainly had their share of injury problems.
I hope Grizz stays healthy. I really, really do.
Yep.
But injury problems have nagged him throughout his entire career. So, it's good to have, a backup plan if things go south again. Hopefully not, but you never know.
Exactly. All right. So also one of the, I guess, biggest surprises of the trade deadline wasn't a trade, but was a trade that did not happen. And that is Jake DeBrusk. Jake DeBrusk is still a Boston Bruin post-trade deadline. And not only is he still a Boston Bruin, but he signed a 2-year contract extension worth $4 million per season, which is a pay raise for DeBrusk, which how this guy got a pay raise is beyond me. But he's still a Bruin, and I think that's, I don't know, at least in my opinion, that's pretty surprising. I thought they were going to be able to move him at the deadline, and especially after he signed the contract extension, I thought that was going to be a sign-and-trade type thing where they sign him, now he's locked into a contract, all the uncertainty of the offseason that the team acquiring him would have had to have dealt with is gone. He's under contract, that you know what his deal is, and then they were going to be able to move him at the deadline, and it didn't happen, and that keeps Jake DeBrusk with the Bruins, at least until the offseason.
I was booking this as a sign and trade. I didn't really think that it would be anything more than that, but he's staying in Boston. I am honestly kind of surprised by this. He said he wanted out initially, but now the 2-year extension makes me feel a little bit differently.
He still wants out.
I mean, he still wants out, but 2-year extension, our team's going to bite during that time frame, or,
Well, I think he gets traded at the draft, honestly. I think this offseason at the draft is when he gets moved.
So this is more of a 10-year move, so to speak, so you give the team a chance at a player with multiple years on the deal instead of a player that'll walk. But I'll be interested to see how that plays out, because he isn't playing bad, obviously, as we've talked about on the show. He wants out, and he's a very streaky player. I mean, I was a little bit surprised by the extension because I thought he would get dealt while his value was still high. We'll have to see how his value either goes up or down before the draft, potentially, because like you and I have talked about, he is a streaky player. So I'm hoping he continues on the upswing for the Bruins' sake in terms of both winning right now and his value moving forward.
Yeah, he only has 1 point in his last 5 games. It was assist in Winnipeg. last game against, or not last game, but last week against the Jets. So you talk about him being a streaky player. Remember, he had like 7 goals in 5 games, or he had that ridiculous streak where he was putting up a bunch of goals. He had 7 goals in 5 games. Since those 7 goals in 5 games, which was a while ago now, all the way back in February, in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games since that streak ended, with the hat trick against LA in February 28th, in the 10 games since then, he only has 2 points, 1 goal and 1 assist. So he's right back to being kind of not producing in the lineup. I mean, this guy is so frustrating. And so just annoying to watch because he's so streaky. And when he goes cold, he goes absolutely ice cold and is completely useless. And unfortunately, he's back into one of those stretches. He had that one really good stretch where he was scoring a bunch. And then since then, he's got 2 points in 10 games and is right back being the Jake DeBrusk that we all want out of here and traded. So, I don't know. I was surprised that he wasn't moved. I really hope they move him in the offseason. I am done with this kid. Again, nothing against him personally, but as far as the product on the ice, it's not good. It's not good.
It sounds like a theme of the 2015 draft class, right?
Yeah.
But in your opinion, what do you think the Bruins could get from him when the draft rolls around? Like, say they were going to make a trade, what do you think his value would be? Obviously, it depends on what he does from now until the end of the season, but do you see like a first-round pick potentially for a really desperate team, or like a second-round pick?
No, I
maybe
mean,
even third.
I honestly, realistically, you might get back another struggling young player from another team. So if he's like Kasperi Kapanen, for example, from Pittsburgh, who's had a horrible year this year, like, you could see a swap DeBrusk for Kapanen or something like that. Not necessarily Kapanen, but a player like that who's also struggling and may benefit from a change of scenery. I don't think you're going to get that much for DeBrusk. I think the highest value that you had for him was when he went on that 5-game, 7 goals in 5 games stretch. That was when his value was at his highest because he was still showing signs that, he can put the puck in the net. But I think his value's probably dropped off again over the last 3 weeks as he's done nothing offensively. And he continues to show why, he wants out and why the Bruins want him out. And I'm just so aggravated with the whole situation and what he's turned into. But I think maybe you get a 2nd or 3rd round pick for him if it's just a draft pick. And if it's a player, it would be another struggling mid-20s guy who maybe would benefit from a change of scenery.
Quite honestly, I would like a player for him because we just talked about the Bruins draft history. I mean, not that the Bruins would be making any high-stake decisions in a pick from the Jake DeBrusk trade. As you mentioned, his value is probably nothing too crazy, but I mean, I don't know. It's just interesting to see, and we've always talked about this, but how quickly the 2015 draft class, with the exception of McAvoy, fell apart. And now the 2-year contract gives him tenure. Hopefully, for his sake and the Bruins' sake, he can perform well down the road. But it's just so frustrating. It's almost like Don Sweeney was blindfolded for the entire 15 draft, and they took off the blindfold to pick Charlie McAvoy. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that we could get maybe like a Lawson Krause from Arizona, who's 24 and 6'4", 215 pounds, but Arizona's not going to give him up now for Jake DeBrusk. He's got 20 goals and 34 points this year. So last year was the opportunity to pull Lawson Krause out of Arizona because he only had 13 points in 51 games and was only had 4 goals, was really struggling. Thought last year was the time to get Krause, and now this year he's back. He has his first ever 20-goal season. Arizona's not going to be giving him up now, so that's a missed opportunity there. I don't know. There's a few players around the league that are kind of, still mid-20s guys that aren't playing all that well and maybe would benefit from a change of scenery. Boston might be able to get one of them for DeBrusk, but I honestly don't think you're going to be getting much for DeBrusk at this point.
No, I think at this point it's more just about getting him out of Boston. That 2-year extension does that, and we'll see how this plays out. I'm hoping, for both parties that he is not a Boston Bruin by next fall.
Dude, half this
Uh,
dude's goals came in that 5-game
yeah,
stretch.
yeah.
He has
Uh,
15 goals on the season. 7 of them came in that 5-game stretch. In the rest of the year, he's done virtually nothing. He's got 8
Yep,
goals the entire rest of the season.
that is Jake DeBrusk to a T right
Yeah,
there. That really is.
it is extremely aggravating.
And people were thinking that, he could be the next Tyler Sagan or
Dude,
something
I
to
thought
that
he was going
effect.
to be a 30-goal scorer.
Yeah.
3 years ago, after the 2018-19 season, I thought DeBrusk was going to be a legitimate top 6 30-goal guy,
hmm
60 points year in and year out, and he's just fallen flat on his face.
And he has the skills to do so. That's the thing. Like, when he is on his game, you could see where, you would say, oh, he's going to be a future 30-goal scorer, but it just never all comes together. That's the most frustrating part.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's see. We've talked about Lindholm. We've talked about Josh Brown. We've talked about Jake DeBrusk not being traded. Interesting article, well, it's not just an article. It was said by Don Sweeney. Interesting comments made by Don Sweeney about Boston's first-round pick from last year. Fabian Lysell, who's been playing in the WHL this season, has had a 20-goal year in the WHL, has been playing very, very well. 19 years old, on the smaller side, but obviously very good skater, high skill set, very good player. I loved the pick when we made it in
Me
the
too.
draft last year. I think he was a guy that I personally in my draft rankings had in the top 15.
Mm.
I think I had him like 11th or 12th in my draft rankings last year, and he dropped all the way into the 20s for Boston to get. So, obviously happy with him being drafted by the Bruins, and he's had a very good year. His first year coming over and playing North American hockey. He had been playing in Sweden before then. He is Swedish. But he comes over now, plays his first year in the WHL, has 20 goals and 51 points in 43 games so far with the Vancouver Giants. And Don Sweeney came out and said that, there's a good chance Lysell joins either the Boston Bruins or the Providence Bruins at some point this season and starts playing pro hockey. So that could be a very interesting addition here to the overall roster landscape of the Bruins if they get a young 19-year-old right wing playing, his first pro games.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked when he fell to the Bruins because, like you said,
I think I had him 12th in my rankings,
yeah,
and he dropped all the way down to 21.
yeah, I was shocked when the Bruins had a chance to draft him. I was very excited. And just going back to the deadline real quickly, the fact that the Bruins were able to make an impact move for Lindholm without giving up, a guy like Lysell or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
that was also big too. Because I had heard his name rumored, and some teams wanted him. I think it was Vancouver, right? We talked about it last week. Vancouver wanted Lysell in some sort of package deal for.
Did not want to give him up.
Yeah,
He was a guy that he was off the trade board, did not want to
yeah.
give him up.
But getting back to him coming up or not the season, I think if he goes up to Boston, I wouldn't necessarily mind that. I understand he's still developing, and I understand you don't want to rush him, but I'd like to see what he could do because, truthfully, and this is very selfish of me, but I'm tired of seeing draft picks develop in Providence because sometimes they never pan out. Like I said, I understand he still has development to go, but I would be interested to see what he could bring to the parent club. He's only 19. He still has a lot of room to grow. He's probably not going to stick with the Bruins, but if he can get a cup of coffee up in Boston, then that will at least give us a good gauge of what he could be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'd like to see him start in Providence. I don't think it's fair to take a 19-year-old playing junior hockey and then just throw him into the NHL. I'd like to at least see him get 5 or 6 games down in Providence. And at least, see what he looks like at that level. And, how does where is he at as far as being at a pro hockey level? Because it's a big jump between juniors and the pros. I mean, that's a whole new ball game. And I do think of all the junior leagues, the WHL is the best one and gets you most prepared for NHL hockey. It's the most physical of the Canadian junior leagues. It's the most pro-style game, big rough and tumble players out in the WHL, whereas, like the OHL barely even has hitting anymore, no fighting. So there's, that doesn't get you necessarily ready for the NHL all that well, whereas the WHL, that's the league that I want my players developing in, because that is very pro-style hockey. Obviously, players not all at that level, but the same style of game. And I'm glad that he went out to the WHL to play there. And I'd like to see him get at least a few games. Give him a couple weekends with Providence and see what he does. And if he's, if he looks good and looks like he's ready to go, then sure, bump him up to Boston for a few games. Let's see what he can do. But I don't know. I'm a big fan of development and being patient and not rushing guys, because I think the number one way to ruin a prospect is to rush them to the NHL, and then all of a sudden their confidence gets shattered, and any chance they had of becoming, a great player, reaching the potential that they're supposed to, can be pretty much ruined within just a few, a few months to a year of, trying to rush them to the NHL. So
that's fair.
I'm a fan of the slower development and just letting guys go at their pace. But if he goes down to Providence and, starts lighting it up and has, 5 points in 5 games, then sure, you give him a look at the NHL and see what he can do. But I'd like to at least see him take a stop in Providence first.
If he were to go straight to Boston, I feel like the Bruins would put him in a specific role or on a specific shift or line, not rush him out there and have him play the entire game right away. But
where do you put him, though? Where does he fit in that lineup? Unless he takes Debrusk's spot with Bergeron and Marchand, where does he fit? I mean, that would be the only, because you're not breaking up the Coyle, Frederick, Smith line. That's been the Bruins' best line for a month now. Obviously, Hall, Pastrnak, and Haula have played well together, so I don't think you're breaking that line up. So then he either goes on the fourth line, which he's not that kind of player at all, so there'd be absolutely no point in doing that. For the love of God, do not play this kid on the fourth line. That is completely counterproductive. Or you play him up with Bergeron and Marchand. And then I don't know how I feel about throwing a 19-year-old up on that line and be like, hey, you're a first liner now. Like that has potential downside.
I will say, though, if you're going to put a 19-year-old up on that first line, put him with playmakers like Bergeron and Marchand. Let him get a couple assists and a couple of points. I'm not saying that he'll be able to make that type of impact, but if you were to put him on a line like that, and a line where his mistakes can be easily covered up and he can, make an impact, get a few points on his stat sheet and make him feel good about himself, that would be a good line to put him on.
Oh, 100%. If I'm Bruce Cassidy and Don Sweeney comes to me and says, hey, we're bringing in Lysell from the WHL and he's going to stay up here in Boston, that they're absolutely 100% where he's going is on the right side of Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand, because he doesn't have to worry as much about things defensively. Yes, he'll have some pressure on him, being a top line, but he doesn't have to worry as much about things defensively because Bergeron and Marchand are both incredibly good defensively. He doesn't have to really worry about making mistakes because those two can cover for him and they can easily, make up for it with what they do. And he'll have a good shot to put some points on the board and get the confidence rolling, because if you just have to be on the ice with those two, and they're going to find a way to score goals. They're going to find a way to put the puck in the net. And, you're probably going to pick up some assists. Even if you're not even a primary play driver on the play, you're going to pick up some secondary assists. You might get a nice, rebound goal here or there and a nice tap in. Like, you can put up points if you play with those guys. Now, Debrosk hasn't really been able to, so I think that this kid's probably got more upside at this point than Debrusk. And if he's playing in Boston anywhere, that's the line that he's going on.
Yeah, I was gonna say at this point, Fabian Lysell probably has more potential than Jake
Oh,
DeBrusk.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
DeBrusk can't seem to get out of his own way at times, but no, I mean it'll be interesting to see what they do. If they do put him in Boston, like you said, I'd like to see him on the first line. If they send him in Providence, I think that would be good for his development. And I'm really excited to see what he brings to the table overall. I mean, if he can start making an impact, at least for Providence, within his first couple years of being drafted, then he's on the upper trajectory, the right trajectory, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. And I have really high hopes for Lysell. I think he's going to be a really good player. Again, I was high on him before the draft even started, and when he slipped all the way to 21 for Boston, I was pumped because he is on the smaller side, but he's a good skater. He's a very skilled player, and that's what Boston needs. Boston has been missing that star power. Like they have plenty of the middle type guys and the good hardworking players, but they've missed that star power, particularly among young players. I mean, we're talking about their best offensive players still being, Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand, who are both 30 plus. Taylor Hall's, is he 30? He's pushing 30. Is he 30 now? Is he turned 30 yet?
I'm gonna look that up, but
he's either 29 or 30. So it's not like Taylor Hall's a young guy either. He's a veteran now at the NHL level for quite a while. He is 30. Yeah, he turned 30 in November. So he's not particularly young either. Pastrnak is obviously the real young guy up front that's a real star for the Bruins, and they'd certainly hit on him. But
he's taken on so much of the scoring load at times when the Bruins absolutely didn't have anything. And how much can you put on him?
Exactly.
Yes, he's a great player, and yes, he's a pro, and I understand the argument he gets paid to do this and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. But at some point, he's going to need help for the future, especially when Marchand and Bergeron are gone.
Absolutely. And I think Lysell is exactly the kind of guy that the Bruins needed, the skillful offensive player that the Bruins needed to pick up. And I'm happy that he's here, and I can't wait to see whether he goes to Providence or Boston. I can't wait to see him start playing some pro hockey and get a good look at how good he can be and what his potential looks like.
And when you look at a team like Florida and a team like Tampa Bay, and we've talked about this before, but it's worth talking about a little bit again, they've been able to develop and bring up young players. And if the Bruins can get at least another young player that they say they developed and that he can make an impact, you have players like McAvoy and Carlo and things like that, but you don't really have high potential offensive players that the Bruins
other
have
than
developed.
Pastrnak.
Yeah. And if they can get another guy, another notch in their belt, so to speak, in Lysell, then that would certainly make me, feel good about what the Bruins have been able to do in the draft recently.
Yeah, definitely. Lysell's a guy that they really need to work out. Like of all the missed picks over the years, this is a guy that they really need to work out and become that star scoring winger that they hope that he can be, and I certainly hope that he can be as well.
And quite frankly, they have to make up for lost time because you look at the 2015 draft, that's a lost draft with the exception of McAvoy. We talked about it.
Carlo was 15.
Yeah, McAvoy and Carlo.
McAvoy was 16.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm getting it mixed up. McAvoy 15, Carlo 16.
No, switched.
Switched.
Carlo 15, McAvoy 16.
McAvoy 16. They all blend in. And the good ones, they get overshadowed by the bad picks.
They've drafted defensemen a lot better than they've drafted forwards, that's for sure.
They have. And, if they can get a guy like Lysell to just come in and play well, then that will certainly give them a step in the right direction, especially as the league gets faster and younger with developed talent. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, so I think we've covered all the major non-game anything, other than Patrice Bergeron being out. That's another one. Bergeron's missed the last few games. It's kind of been a weird situation. They were talking about an arm infection with Bergeron, but now it looks like he could be back on Thursday night's game against Tampa Bay. So hopefully he's, the games that he's missed are the only games that he's going to miss and that he'll be back in the lineup. But Boston's still winning. They've done pretty well, even with Bergeron out. you look at what they've done here over the last few games from when we recorded last. They did lose Wednesday against Minnesota 4-2. Although we did expect a loss somewhere along the way on this road trip for the Bruins. So that ended up being their loss. They bounced back Friday night with a win over Winnipeg. They won that one 4-2. And then they picked up an overtime win in Montreal on Monday night against the Canadiens. So last 3 games, they get 2 wins, 1 loss, 4 out of 6 points. And they have caught, as of now, on Wednesday, when we're recording this, as of now, they have tied Toronto with 83 points in the Atlantic Division.
And just, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we were talking about how it would be difficult for the Bruins to catch up to Toronto.
Yeah.
And they've done that. And even the loss on Wednesday against Minnesota, I really enjoyed the game, first of all, and I thought they put forth a very good effort. That score was deceiving because I believe at the end it was an empty net goal, if I remember correctly, to make it 4-2, right? I believe so, because they pulled. Yeah,
Ryan Hartman scored an empty netter. So yes,
I really like watching Minnesota play. I like watching the Bruins play, obviously, but I really like watching Minnesota play. I think the Bruins' style is very comparable to Minnesota, and Minnesota plays hard. They don't give up. They get out on the rush quickly. They play pretty well defensively. The goalie, Minnesota's goalie,
Cam Talbot.
Cam Talbot, he played good on Wednesday, and I thought the Bruins got great goaltending play on Wednesday as well. So it was an overall solid game, and I know you covered that one on your channel. I popped in for a little bit, and
yeah, that was a fun game. I love watching Minnesota too. They're one of my favorite Western teams to watch. They play a really exciting style of hockey, very physical. They got a lot of big bodies. We saw a great fight between Trent Frederick and Brandon Duhaime, former Providence College Friar, Brandon Duhaime. They're just a really fun team to watch, without a doubt. And Boston, I don't think Boston played bad in that game.
No.
I think it was just overall a really good hockey game, and both teams went at it, and the Wild ended up coming out on top. And they needed that win because they hadn't been playing that well going into that one. So that was a big win for Minnesota. Boston does lose 1 game on the road trip, but again, it's not really anything I think to overly worry about because they bounced right back on Friday night against Winnipeg with a 4-2 win over the Jets.
They did, and I will say that Trent Frederick has been continuing to bring the physicality and
the scoring now. All of a sudden, he's got some offensive touch.
He does, and it's been good to see him round out his game, especially when you consider what he did last year and how he kind of came onto the scene last year. We were looking for that same spark again, and he's been able to bring that to Boston.
Dude, Freddie's up to 14 points this year and is a +10.
That's incredible.
Last year, he had 5 points in 42 games and was a -8. This year, in 43 games, he's up to 14 points and a +10. Frederick, Frederick may be a late bloomer here. Don't give up on him. He's 24. He's really starting to come into his own now. He's definitely a little bit of a late bloomer, but he could end up being a really solid third liner, I think.
You know who else was really solid on Friday was Charlie Coyle. He's been playing well too.
Dude, that whole line, Coyle, Frederick, and Smith have been lights out since getting put together.
And that's a line that they should not break up. I'm really happy to see Charlie Coyle kind of find his footing again, and he had another great game on Friday. I think he had 3 assists.
Yep, 37 points this year for Coyle.
And he's really finding his, niche on that line, and it's been really fun to see because I remember last summer we talked about, can he bounce back? Is he kind of on the downturn? This, that, and the other thing. Well, he shut us up. He's been playing great, and it's great to see him bounce back to the player that we thought he could be. And that continued on Friday. Like we said, 3 assists, and he's been really finding his home on that 4th line.
Yeah, I mean, this line for the Bruins has been unbelievable. I think this has become one of the best third lines in the NHL, the way that they're playing right now. And Coyle's got a chance. I don't know if he gets to 50 points, but he certainly has a chance to be up near around 45 points this year. Craig Smith, who had an awful start to the season, is finally starting to put some points on the board. He's got 14 goals now and 30 points in 56 games. So he's gotten it going again over the last few weeks. And then obviously Frederick, what he's done offensively, best offense we've seen from him in his NHL career as well. So that line, Boston certainly will not be breaking up anytime soon because they have been lights out. And they played a big role again in Boston getting this win against the Jets on Friday. Frederick had a goal assisted by Coyle and Smith. Then Coyle got another assist on a power play goal by Taylor Hall. He got a third assist on a goal from Charlie McAvoy in the third. So, I don't know. This was a nice bounce-back win, a big road win against a team that is very desperate for points in Winnipeg, who are trying to get themselves back into the playoffs, but haven't had the best year so far this season that they were expecting to. And Boston finds a way to get the job done.
And one of the big things that we talked about on the show before is, could the Bruins secondary scoring keep going? So far, they are answering with the resounding yes.
Yeah, it has, and I think that's
very encouraging to see.
Huge for this team. Huge for this team is the fact that their secondary scoring is continuing. Because, again, when they're a one-line team, sure, they can still win in the regular season, and sure, they can, be a good team in the regular season. But come playoff time, if you're a one-line team, you're in a lot of trouble. And Boston is not a one-line team anymore. And that is, I think, one of the most important things for this team going into the playoffs.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And with the emergence of Coyle, something the Bruins didn't have in the playoffs last year, and, with Taylor Hall finding his groove, and maybe Jake DeBrusk goes on a little streak again, and, hopefully helps the Bruins. I'm really encouraged by what the Bruins have been able to do to help out the big three.
Absolutely. All right, so final game from this past stretch since we last recorded was Monday night against the Montreal Canadiens. 3-2 overtime win against Montreal in Montreal. It's the first time the Bruins have played at Bell Center in Montreal since before COVID started. So,
wow.
Over 2 years since the Bruins have played in Montreal, because obviously last year for the 2020, Montreal wasn't a playoff team, so there was no matchup there. 2021, last year, Montreal was in the All-Canadian division and obviously didn't play against the Bruins. And then it wasn't until this year, late March, where they actually get to go to Montreal and play there. So this was a good game. This was actually a really tight, good game. And I know, people will say, well, why are the Bruins in an overtime game against the Canadiens? Montreal's the worst team in the league. Like, why was this so close? Because Montreal has been playing significantly better since Marty St. Louis has taken over as head coach. And they're not the pack it in, game's over before it begins, doesn't want to be there type team that they were early in the season. St. Louis has them playing with effort, has them playing with edge, has them playing with attitude, and they're a competitive team. They're not getting blown out of games. Montreal is playing a lot better competitive hockey under Marty St. Louis, and they showed that Monday night.
I loved Marty St. Louis as a player. I really did.
Absolutely.
And, the Bruins were able to get a win in this one. It was an overtime win, and on top of Montreal playing better, it's also a rivalry game, so that adds some extra juice.
Yep.
And it was great to see Charlie Coyle get on the board again with an assist, 2 assists from Eric Holla, who has found his offensive game as well over the course of these past couple weeks. Yeah, he's been really good. So, it seems like things are continuing to gel for the Bruins, and it's coming from some unexpected sources as well, which is great for
Connor Clifton tied the game. Connor Clifton gets his second goal of the season to tie the game with like 3 minutes left, and that's what allowed the game to even go to overtime.
It's almost as if, the Bruins were like, okay, let's not rely on the big three. Let's just try to go out and play our game. And make an impact. And you've seen a bunch of players over this past week really step up. In addition to Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak, it's been really fun to watch.
Well, speaking of Brad Marchand, he had 2 goals in this game, including the OT winner. How about that OT winner? That was just filthy.
That's why Brad Marchand is Brad Marchand. Just another day at the office, right?
Yeah.
And he makes it look so easy, and it's fun to watch him, and I'm glad I get to do so every night. And we mentioned the players getting older and things like that. Tell that to Brad Marchand, because he still looks like he's at the top of his game.
Absolutely. He's playing incredible hockey, per usual with him. Want to give a shout-out, though, to Montreal goaltender Jake Allen, because Jake Allen was absolutely phenomenal in this game for the Canadiens. Yes, he ended up giving up 3 goals, but the Bruins had 46 shots in this game, and Allen stopped 43 of those 46 and made some monster saves, particularly in the third period, where Montreal was trying to steal this game. And if Montreal was able to get the win out of this one, that's exactly what it would have been. Jake Allen stealing this game for the Canadiens. Obviously came up a little bit short at the end, but he deserves a lot of credit for the game that he played. He looked awesome in net.
When it comes to goaltender stats, I always say watch the game and don't look at the box score, because the box scores can be deceiving at times. And Allen, I thought, was really good. He was the St. Louis backup goaltender for a little bit, right?
Yes, before he went to Montreal, yep.
Yeah, and he was solid in St. Louis. He's been solid for Montreal, despite the loss. I thought he played really well, and, it was a good old-fashioned Montreal-Boston hockey game. And, if I think the future's bright for Montreal if they can continue to, win here and then parlay that into next season. The future is bright for them, and it would be good for the Bruins Canadiens rivalry to feature 2 winning teams again, because it's one of the best rivalries in sports when it's hot.
Yeah, absolutely, and it really hasn't been all that hot recently,
No.
and certainly, the going a long time without playing each other played a role in that, and then Montreal not being any good this year certainly played a role in that. It's a lot better when both of these teams are playoff-level teams, because it really just ramps it up even more.
The 2011 playoffs come to mind. Back in the day.
Exactly.
Oh boy, that was fun. And then there was that game in February that year where the goalie, where Carey Price and I think it was Tim Thomas fought.
Yep.
And that was crazy. That was a fun year.
That was an awesome year. Yeah, early 2010s Bruins versus Canadiens was very, very hot. It's died off a little since then, but early 2010s Bruins Canadiens was a great period of time for that rivalry.
03-04 Bruins Canadiens was also very good.
Yes.
So.
All right, so those are the last 3 games for Boston. They lose to Minnesota, but they beat Winnipeg and Montreal. They go 2-1 over their last 3 games. And that gets us to the upcoming schedule to close out this show. Coming up on Thursday night, again, we're recording this on Wednesday, so this game will have happened by the time you see the show on Friday, but Thursday night against Tampa Bay, 7 p.m. in Boston. Bruins back on home ice against one of their biggest division rivals in the Lightning. Both teams should have all of their trade deadline acquisitions in the lineup. Lindholm, I assume, will be in the lineup for the Bruins, and Hagel and Nick Paul will be in the lineup for Tampa Bay. So this is going to be a big time showdown. How do you think this one's going to go? What are you looking at for this one here?
I'm just looking to see how Lindholm plays, and I'm looking for the Bruins to keep it close. I don't think they'll win, just because it seems like Tampa Bay always has their number lately.
Oh, except this year. It's been weird.
Yeah, it has been weird, but I feel like this game is the one where Tampa Bay could get back on track. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm chalking this one up as a loss for the Bruins, but I don't think it's going to be a boring game. I think it's going to be a really fun one.
Well, I hope so, because I'm going to this game. My friend got tickets to this one, and I'm actually going to this game. So
that's awesome.
I am hoping that it's going to be a typical Bruins versus Lightning rivalry type feel to it. I mean, Boston's played Tampa well this year, certainly better than they have the 2 previous seasons. I think this is going to be a very close, hard-fought game. Obviously, the Lightning are a great team. They have a very real chance of winning this game, but so do the Bruins, I think. I think Boston's been playing well enough recently where they could definitely win this one as well. I think it's going to be really tight. This one could go either way. It's going to be, I'm hoping it's going to be a lot of fun, though. I'm really hoping that this is your typical Bruins versus Lightning, real physical, nasty matchup where these two teams don't like each other. It hasn't really been that way this season. Obviously, last year, last year they didn't play, but 2 years ago, well, I guess now 2020 was 2 years ago. If you go back to like 2020 and 2019, this was one of those matchups where it was physical and nasty every time they got on the ice. It hasn't really been that way this year. I hope that kind of picks back up now with this late season matchup. Also, with these teams pretty close in the standings as well, there's certainly going to be some added intensity to the game with that. So I'm hoping for a really good one on Thursday night, and then Saturday, they got the New York Islanders in an afternoon game at home. Islanders are a team that Boston has struggled with.
They have. They really have. And it's kind of, that's been the Bruins' Achilles heel. It hasn't been the Lightning as it has in past years. It's been the New York Islanders. And I see the Bruins squeaking out this one. It's a 12:30 game, I think.
Yeah, afternoon start.
And what channel is it on? Do you know? Is it on NESN?
I believe it's NESN, yeah.
Okay. That's weird if it's a 12:30 game on NESN on a Saturday. But anyway.
It's also on NHL Network.
Oh, okay.
But it's on NESN.
All right. So I see a Bruins win. I see a close game again. I see a 2-1 Bruins win in regulation. Again, this one is a coin flip. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Islanders win either, just because the Islanders seem to have the Bruins number lately, and it's very frustrating.
Yep.
But so far, 1-1 on the week, and then who does the Bruins have next? I'm looking at the schedule right now.
This is going to be a big one. This might be an even bigger game than the Lightning game. Next Tuesday night, the Toronto Maple Leafs in Boston. Boston and Toronto tied right now at 83 points apiece.
That's going to be a fun one. That is going to be.
Oh, I cannot wait for this.
Are you going to that one or no?
No.
Stream it probably, right?
I will definitely be streaming it.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. I mean, this is one where you've heard me say it so many times this past couple weeks, point matter and blah, 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 and all that happy stuff. This one is big. I mean, if the Bruins can win this one, then that will give them a much better shot in terms of, yes, obviously making the playoffs, but now we're looking at playoff matchups, and this is going to be a good one. I mean, Maple Leafs, Bruins are always good games.
Yeah.
It's never short for drama, never short for physicality, never short of, playmakers, and that is going to be a really fun one. I can't wait.
100%. I absolutely cannot wait. That Maple Leafs Bruins game on the 29th is going to be a massive game in the standings, a massive game for this rivalry. Obviously, a massive game for the fans going back and forth of each team. It's just going to be a huge one. And that's going to be an important game for the Bruins to kind of show that, hey, we can take this spot from you in the standings. You are not guaranteed to finish in the top three because we can easily come up there and break into the top three and take that spot from you.
And now as the calendar turns to April, we're in the final home stretch here. And
last month of the season.
Absolutely. And every game from here on out is going to be even more important. I mean, there's a lot up for grabs still here. A lot of competitive teams, especially after this fantastic trade deadline. And the Maple Leafs game is one that is going to be extremely important for the Bruins to play well and hopefully win. I'm not, counting my chickens before they hatch.
Yeah.
I will offer a prediction just because that's what I've been doing.
Yep.
I'll say the Bruins win this one 3-2, and it's not going to be an easy one. None of these games this week are going to be easy. None of these games this week are going to be easy at all.
Not at all.
And so, what do you think this week, John? What do you think?
I'm going to say 2-1 record this week.
Okay.
I don't know which the two are going to be and which the one's going to be, but I'm going to say they go 2-1. They have 3 difficult games against, very tough opponents in Tampa Bay and Toronto, and an Islanders team that, despite struggling this year, has played the Bruins very, very tough and given them fits. So 3 difficult games here for Boston this week. Now, the good news is they're all at home, so the Bruins don't have to worry about travel. But I am going to go 2-1 over these next 3 games.
I'm going to say they're going to lose tomorrow and then win the next 2. That's how I think it's going to go.
So we both have them going 2-1 here over the next 3, and I think everyone will be pretty happy with that if they're able to pull it off.
Let's hope they are. This is a crucial point in the season now. We're looking towards the playoffs. Good opponents that hopefully they'll see in the playoffs as they hopefully advance past the first round. I mean, new acquisition, Hampus Lindholm, a lot of storylines this week, and it's going to be exciting. This is the type of hockey that we've wanted to see.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. So that is going to bring us to the end here, guys. Episode 60 of BNG Weekly. Thank you all so much for watching. Danny, once again, it was awesome to have you on. Awesome to talk some hockey. Really appreciate you taking the time. And we'll have to see how this week goes for Boston.
Thank you for having me on. What a week, huh? And it's going to get even more fun as these days and games go by. And I appreciate you having me on, as always.
Yeah, man. As we get closer to the playoffs, it's just going to get crazier and crazier.
Absolutely.
But before we go, I once again want to give a big thank you to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show would not be happening without them. So thank you for all the support, everybody at BNG. And I also want to draw your attention to the description again, the 3 links if you're in the market for Boston Bruins apparel, NHL apparel from any team, or college apparel from the NCAA. Check out those links in the description. It really does help a lot and is greatly appreciated. But that is going to do it here for episode 60. We'll be back next week with episode 61. We'll have a new week of action to talk about, and we'll see how the Bruins can do this week. Thank you guys again so much for watching. See you guys next time, and go Bruins.